We are kicking off today with Survivor Series Wargames, which may have featured plenty of top names in the company, but with a show like this, it was easy to think about what didn't happen just as much as what did. With the short cards that hover around 5 matches that Paul Levesque uses, it'd be impossible to have every champion on the show, but is WWE using its time wisely at PLEs? The inclusion of a second women's match or tag title match could have helped, especially as some matches could have done with some time being trimmed, but they weren't the biggest omissions. This show didn't feature either Cody Rhodes or Kevin Owens, and while saving their match for Saturday night's main event makes sense, it's baffling just how little of the pair there was. The show was in Owens' native Canada after all, and we predict many Vancouver fans bought tickets months ago hoping to see him, or at least more than a single video package. Owens' feud with Cody is linked to the Bloodline, more specifically Cody Rhodes teaming with Roman Reigns at Bad Blood, an act that has made Rhodes into Owens' #1 enemy. Owens turned on Cody over one match and hospitalized Randy Orton for appearing to side with Cody, and yet KO has shown no issue with his best friend Sami Zayn rejoining the OG Bloodline. Zayn spent the evening teaming with Reigns and the Usos, as well as CM Punk, and even went as far as to hug the OG Bloodline and share a fist bump with the OTC. Owens' oldest, closest friend is doing more than what Cody ever did, less than 2 years after Sami and Owens battled the Bloodline, and KO is just nowhere to be found during their segments. You can't do everything on the same show, but something has to be done about this plot hole, whether it be a promo segment or something backstage to show these angles are interlinked. Having Owens acknowledge what Sami is doing would go a long way, especially if it showed Kevin to be a hypocrite, building further support for Cody ahead of their title match. Seth Rollins, another name fans expected, was also missing, and like Owens, he could have come out and acknowledged his history with pretty much everyone in the Wargames match. The match had Bronson Reed, CM Punk, and Roman Reigns, 3 people who have been enemies of Rollins, and yet there was no Rollins to even bring attention to his ties to the Bloodline saga. There are other people and other stories with deep roots in the Bloodline, and while the main event was somewhat cathartic, it didn't have true satisfaction without these other characters. One can only hope that we get this recognition down the line, but that didn't stop things from feeling somewhat underwhelming at Survivor Series Wargames. For all the things that WWE got right at its latest PLE, there were some glaring errors with the Vancouver PLE, including in the women's Wargames match that opened up the show. While the match displayed incredible in-ring work from all 10 women involved, the storytelling in the match ranged from being bad to non-existent. With little build, it felt like this match only happened in Wargames just because there was also a men's match, which should hardly be the reason to bring out such an iconic stipulation. The argument could be made to not do 2 Wargames matches every year, and instead save them for when the storyline needs them, which wasn't the case with the women's match. This match had the potential to create new stories with 10 of WWE's top women and simply didn't, despite the inclusion of both the Women's Champion and Women's World Champion. In addition to Nia Jax and Liv Morgan, you had Miss Money in the Bank Tiffany Stratton in the ring, whose teased cash-in was a brief, fleeting moment in the match. Stratton retrieved her briefcase from the trash can she brought into the ring, but of all people, it was Raquel Rodriguez who distracted her long enough to prevent the cash-in. Stratton teased cashing in when both champs were down, but Raquel, someone who has no prior relationship with Tiffany, being the difference maker, felt odd. In theory, there is still a story out there with Stratton and the briefcase, but the angle of her and Jax teasing dissension amid Jax's awful treatment of her is getting old on SmackDown. Well, Rodriguez was obviously protecting Liv Morgan from a cash-in. The story that's been told so far has made it clear Tiffany will cash in on Nia, making this spot seem redundant. Speaking of Morgan, the Women's World Champion was in the ring with the #1 contender Io Sky, and one would struggle to remember a spot they did together. If the pair did go one-on-one at any point, it certainly wasn't big or memorable, and with no date set for their title match, this also felt like a big missed opportunity. Nia Jax is a champion without any challengers after both Bayley and Naomi came up short in their efforts, and yet nothing was teased for Nia during Wargames. It would have been huge if there'd been a tease of someone coming for the women's champion, especially if it saw a Raw superstar make the jump to SmackDown to challenge her. The women's Wargames was a great way to start the show, but none of the spots felt memorable outside for Sky's trash can dive from the top of the cage. One memorable spot can't save what was a match that had zero implications for any WWE stories, as nothing was developed or gained in this contest. During last week's SmackDown, CM Punk and Roman Reigns came face to face, with Paul Heyman being given the tall task of maintaining the peace between the two. Punk shared that he would aid the OG bloodline in Wargames, but wanted a favor from Heyman in return, a favor that Heyman did not disclose to his tribal chief when asked. After the team's victory in Vancouver, Punk reminded Heyman of the favor, adding more intrigue, but what could it be that the wise man now owes the best in the world? On Wrestling Observer Radio, it was brought up that when Punk returned, the plan was for a match with Seth Rollins at WrestleMania, with plans for a match with Reigns for way later. It seems Punk's favor could be Heyman ensuring that both matches happen, with a prediction for the Roman match being in late 2025 or in 2026 in what will be a meeting of two WWE icons. Reigns vs. Punk has WrestleMania written all over it, and if WWE does keep it till 2026, then this favor will be one Punk will be lauding over Paul Heyman for a very long time. The implications of that is huge, as Heyman could grow tired of Punk holding this favor over him, disrupting the friendship between the Hall of Famer and the best in the world. Punk's 2024 didn't go as WWE had intended, but the next few years could be huge if he remains injury-free, and we may be seeing him share the ring with a tribal chief down the line. At Survivor Series Wargames, Shinsuke Nakamura won the US title from LA Knight, but this wasn't just a highlight for WWE, but part of a bigger plan outside the promotion. In the Wrestling Observer Daily Update, Brian Alvarez reports that Nakamura's win is being pushed heavily in Pro Wrestling Noah ahead of his return to the promotion next month. Nakamura will face Oka Sasaki on the January 1st show at Budokan Hall as part of Noah's New Year's show, which will see GHC champion Kato Kiyomiya defend against Ozawa. Having Nakamura and Knight's 119-day run with the title was done to showcase Nakamura ahead of the Noah match, adding more star power to the new champion's name. The crossover potential following Nakamura's win shows WWE's willingness to work with other promotions, even to the point of having a title change to help garner intrigue for another show. Fans are now eagerly awaiting Nakamura's next move as the new US champion prepares for his return to Japan, all while having to deal with potential challengers back in WWE. Following Survivor Series, LA Knight didn't mince his words, as he was frustrated in a video on Twitter where he brushed off the cameraman and remarked, "To be continued." Despite the setback, Knight's story is far from over, as with a rematch clause in play, there's a good chance fans will see him challenge Nakamura when the time is right. It remains to be seen how WWE will handle one of its most beloved stars in this new chapter of his career, especially with Nakamura's focus turning to matters outside the promotion. What do you think of Shinsuke Nakamura's title win being linked to his Noah appearance? Does this add value to the US title, or does it take away from WWE's storylines? Let us know below. Over to AEW now, as Penta El Zero Miedo has been a major name in the company's tag division for years, but now his time being All Elite has come to an end. Fightful Select reports that Penta's contract with AEW has ended, and he is now a free agent, but that Rey Fenix remains under contract with the company. The report adds that there had been no indication that AEW had no plans for the team after discovering that Penta had been talking to WWE. While Death Triangle, which includes Penta, Fenix, and Pac, had been considered for a trios title win at All In London, those plans obviously changed for the UK pay-per-view. On Instagram, Rey Fenix shared a statement about the reports of Penta's exit, saying that there are many things that aren't known and that should not be talked about. He adds, "There are many things that are not known, but that should also not be talked about. We must wait. Professionalism first and foremost, folks. We must not be the same as all those podcasts that go around spilling out what should not be spilt out. Never diminish our work. There are things that should always be respected, and many are forgetting everything that wrestling has given them." Penta's final match for AEW came on the July 19th Rampage, where he and Fenix defeated Private Party, while Fenix hasn't wrestled for AEW since defeating Tony Nese on that week's Collision. Many fans are expecting to see these two wind up in WWE when Fenix is out of his AEW contract, but for now, Penta is a free agent and is ready to work and sign with whoever he chooses. Do you think more could have been done by AEW to keep Penta around? Where would you like to see the Lucha Bros go next? Let us know in the comments. Survivor Series saw Nia Jax enter Wargames for the first time, but some of the offense Jax delivered hardly matched what fans have come to expect in the double cage structure. On Twitter, one fan of Jax's said it feels at times that she's worried about harming her opponents, leading to moves that look fake or sloppy, though said Jax has improved. This tweet caught the attention of the WWE Women's Champion, who said she loves the emotion she evokes from the fans and found the fans' comment LOL worthy. Jax faced criticism for her chair shots during the match, which fans felt lacked impact, so much so that Hulk Hogan's name trended as the WWE icon was compared to the irresistible force. Fans shared footage of Hogan's infamous chair shot on Conan in WCW in the early 2000s that lacked any impact, and fans joked that Jax was paying homage to the Hulkster. Ultimately, Jax's team lost in Wargames, but what did you make of her chair shots? Do you think she's improved in her year back with WWE? Share your thoughts in the comments. More from Survivor Series as Bronson Reed delivered a jaw-dropping tsunami from the top of the Wargames cage and would have flattened Roman Reigns if not for CM Punk's interference. After the match, Reed reportedly needed help to get backstage, demonstrating the high-risk nature of the move, and Triple H addressed Reed potentially being hurt during the post-show. WWE's chief content officer said that Reed was getting looked at and his status would be questionable for a few weeks, and now Reed himself has commented. On Twitter, Reed shared a photo of the moment he dived, adding that injuries are temporary, moments are forever, and Reed certainly made a moment last week in Vancouver. Do you think Reed's dive was worth it, given that his status will be questionable for the next few weeks? Share your thoughts on this huge spot down in the comments section. The Women's Wargames match saw Rhea Ripley return to action in her first match in close to 2 months, and Ripley dressed to impress in Vancouver. Still nursing an orbital bone injury, Ripley arrived wearing a protective mask with horns, which was created by horror props and effects star Jason Baker. On Twitter, Baker shared that he sculpted and painted the mask, saying it was a challenge to incorporate Ripley's protective face mask into something both elaborate and functional. Baker, who has worked with WWE with masks for Bray Wyatt, the Wyatt Six, and Triple H's Skull King, expressed gratitude for his crew who worked a 14-hour shift to finish this mask. Beneath the mask, Ripley wore some gothic makeup, including a red scar line just above her eye, and on Instagram, shared that she'd been inspired by her husband, Buddy Matthews. Ripley shared some photos of Matthews, who wore similar face paint, and what did you make of Rhea's look at Survivor Series Wargames? Let us know down in the comments. Over to AEW Collision, which was headlined by Kazuchika Okada competing in his first Continental Classic match in the Blue League against TNT champion Daniel Garcia. In a battle of champions, Garcia and the reigning Continental Champion held nothing back, and Garcia got close to making Okada tap out before the 20-minute time limit expired. Given that the match ended in a draw, Okada and Garcia will have to share 1 point each in the Blue League, and post-match, Okada seemed ready to give Garcia a handshake in respect. When Garcia went for the handshake, Okada instead gave the TNT Champion the middle finger. And who are you rooting for in the Continental Classic? Let us know down below. Now, in the latest edition of Dynamite, Hangman Adam Page and Jay White both stated their claims to the AEW World title, only to be attacked by the Death Riders. Wheeler Yuta was one of the faction members who got into things with Page, and so a match between the two was made for the latest edition of AEW Collision. During that match, Jon Moxley and the rest of the Death Riders arrived to watch Yuta from a distance, and when Page went for the buckshot lariat, his knee gave in, stopping the move. Thinking on his feet, Page finished the match with a deadeye instead and continued his attack on Wheeler, seemingly hoping that the attack would draw the Death Riders closer to him. Despite the attack on Yuta, Moxley and his crew didn't get involved, and it was Jay White who came out with a steel chair to chase Page away, giving Yuta a reprieve. That didn't last long as Switchblade hit Yuta with a Blade Runner for good measure, and amidst all of this, Jon Moxley was unfazed and didn't lift a finger to help. This was interestingly something of a throwback to the BCC, who didn't interfere in each other's matches, as anyone worthy of a spot in that group wouldn't need outside help. Moxley has no shortage of challengers, with Christian Cage also teasing a cash-in. And what do you make of his refusal to help Yuta on the latest episode of AEW Collision? After a 6-month absence due to a back injury, Juice Robinson made his return to AEW at Double or Nothing in May, and has been a featured star ever since. Now, though it sadly appears Robinson has been dealt another injury, as during Collision, he took on Will Ospreay in the Continental Classic's Gold League. Despite another great showing, Robinson lost to Ospreay, and Fightful Select reports that Robinson suffered an injury during the show that was taped last Wednesday after Dynamite. Robinson was at the WrestleCade convention over the weekend, but was spotted on crutches, but the report did not disclose the exact nature of the injury. It's also unclear when exactly in the match the injury happened, and a setback like this is the last thing he or AEW needs, especially with his involvement in the Continental Classic. It remains to be seen what comes from this situation and whether he'll need to be replaced in the tournament, but we'll continue to monitor his situation for further updates. At Survivor Series, CM Punk marked 1 year since his WWE return by emerging victorious in Wargames and decided to have some fun later in the night during the post-show. Punk joined Sami Zayn and the Usos to discuss the match, their win, and the Bloodline saga, but during their appearance, a hungry Punk quipped, "Somebody give me some muffins." Fans immediately picked up on this being a nod to Punk's infamous All Out 2022 rant, where he lashed out at many in AEW while chowing down on muffins from Mindy's Bakery. This has been referenced in WWE before, with Drew McIntyre visiting Mindy's Bakery back in March to taunt the then injured Best in the World. The All Out 2022 media scrum forever changed Punk's standing in AEW, but he seems to be in a much better headspace now, and this week's post-show was scandal-free. Since arriving in WWE, Bron Breakker has been seen as a future top star of the company, and many feel his career could be elevated by aligning with Paul Heyman. After all, Heyman has worked with top stars including Roman Reigns, CM Punk, and Brock Lesnar, and Bron is ready to take the wise man's advice on board. Speaking during the Survivor Series post-show, Breakker was asked about a potential alliance with Heyman and didn't rule out the idea, as he said, "I definitely think there's some possibility of that happening at some point down the line. The door's definitely open. I guess we just never say never on that." This isn't the first time that the two have been linked, as Heyman and Breakker shared a brief partnership in WWE NXT in October of last year, leaving fans wanting to see more. As for now, Heyman is being kept busy dealing with Roman Reigns, the Bloodline, and the favor he owes CM Punk, but that doesn't mean he won't pick up another client soon. As for Bron, he continues to forge his own path as one of WWE's rising stars, but the Intercontinental Champion's comments add another layer of intrigue to his dramatic rise. But what do you think about Bron Breakker potentially teaming up with Paul Heyman? Would this be a great partnership for the pair? Share your thoughts and feedback in the comments below. At Turning Point, Matt Riddle debuted in TNA Wrestling to team with Zachary Wentz and Kushida to face World Tag Team Champions the Hardys and ABC's Ace Austin. While Riddle's team lost, his arrival certainly made a huge impression with the fans, and what's next for the original bro in TNA Wrestling? Fightful Select reports that TNA only found out that Trey Miguel, the originally planned ally of Wentz and Kushida, would not make the show on Friday, the same day as Turning Point. Riddle reportedly found out not long before the show that he was needed, with sources in TNA stating that the situation was far from ideal, but they weren't worried about finding a substitute. That's because Turning Point was a part of the WrestleCade event, and there were 100 or so possible replacements for Miguel, but the company went with Riddle. Those in TNA were said to be pleased with the reaction Matt received, but would not commit to using him again at this time, and he's yet to be advertised for any future TNA events. Riddle was cut from WWE in 2023 after a series of controversies, and do you want to see more of him in TNA, or will he only continue to cause problems like he did in WWE? Let us know below. And we're ending with WWE, and unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know that on January 6th, WWE Raw will premiere on Netflix, but fans outside of the US will get so much more. International fans will receive Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and PLEs, effectively replacing the WWE network that was first launched in 2014. This week, fans in the UK and Ireland received an email announcing that their network subscription had been cancelled ahead of the move to Netflix in a matter of weeks. The email does add that as a thank you, fans will receive complimentary access to the network until December 31st, but after that date, fans will need a Netflix subscription to enjoy content. WWE has big plans for the move to Netflix, with top names including John Cena being promoted for the debut Raw on the streaming giant from Inglewood's Intuit Dome. Are you excited for Raw's move to Netflix? How do you think this will change how fans absorb WWE content? Let us know down in the comments section below.